Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Midday Update. I am Laz. We had a brutal Friday. We anticipated a little more selling come Monday. There is a lot to look at here, so let's just pop right into our charts and let's fire it away. We're going to start with the SPYs here, and I'm looking at a weekly chart. I'm looking broad here. I'm going to start, big picture type stuff. And as far as the SPYs go, this is off of these, mid 2011 lows. We've had three drives at a high. The first drive here, second drive here, and then lastly our third drive back in August. What have we seen since this last spike high? We've seen some volatility. We've seen some overlapping candlesticks. We've seen our averages start to flatten out. And last week I think was highlighted really all in one day. We had this big topping tail, and this was Friday of last week, which basically, let's go down a time frame and look at the daily, basically gave back an entire week's worth of gains where, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we saw up, and the market starting to, regain some strength. Friday, right back to the lows. So a big sell-off here, and again, this marks another lower high here in the S&Ps. Volatility in terms of bottoms and tops, you usually see a lot of volatility at market tops. Market tops generally by nature develop over time, whereas bottoms will happen more often than not in an instant or more of a V-shape formation. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I'm sort of giving a little bit of an education lesson here, tops happen by ebb and flow, ups and downs, and up and down, and up and down, until eventually, you get some sort of large, breakdown in price. Whereas bottoms, generally, a stock will trade down and then bottom and start to trade right back up. So it's a very different process in terms of bottoming and topping, and that's kind of what I see happening in here in the S&Ps. Overall, you have this flattening of our averages. I've talked about the 21 over and over and over. It's gone flat. We saw a huge sell-off on Friday where everything was just, there was really no safety from the market. Market down about 200 points on Friday, and the S&P's down about 25 handles. Now what? Well, we have a level of support that's been developing here in the 143, upper 142 area in the SPYs. And I suspect, you might see 1 to 2 days of consolidation. I'll get my line tool out, maybe maybe a little 1, 2, 3 type thing. And then I expect possibly more selling. And I think we could trade as low as, the 140 SPY area. So we're going to keep an eye on this pattern as it develops. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of follow through today from Friday, as it's really just a consolidation type trade. If we go down and we look at our 60-minute chart, here's an hourly. What you'll see here is that we've just, since basically the midpoint of Friday's session, it's been a very choppy session. Lots of overlapping candlesticks here. No real impulse, no real commitment, and I suspect this might, it might be like this for the remainder of the day and possibly into the next, day and a half or 2 days. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Let's go back out to that big time frame. This is the weekly chart. You want to pay attention to, trend lines and key levels here. Short-term trend, probably not down until this area. You can see, again, just connecting our, pivot lows here. That'll probably come into play again, SPY 140 or even possibly lower than that. So it looks to me like this market's starting to decay a little bit, and obviously, we're going to get into some stock specifics. Primarily, we're going to look at Apple, and I want to do kind of a top-down analysis here on Apple. Again, let's look at this weekly chart. The weekly chart, big push down off of those 705 highs. And notice the candlestick here on the weekly, right at this high, very, very tight range, narrow body, a real typical doji, and that's usually the calm before a storm. And when you get these types of bars, this is the storm that then, follows. And Apple has had a large move down at this point. I think the selling will probably subside for a little bit. We did see a little bit of a head and shoulders topping pattern back here we talked about. developing, and this pattern pretty much has played out. Patterns generally dictate distance and direction, and this pattern pretty much, maybe a little lower, but this one to me has seen the vast majority of this pattern, kind of play itself out, this head and shoulders topping pattern. What's it going to do now? What are we going to do with this stock now? Well, I suspect, like some other things, we did snap back a little bit today. Short term, back into resistance here on the daily. You can, kind of see we're back into this, what was support and then broke, snapping back today. I suspect you might see a couple of days in this range before the stock really tips its hand as to what it wants to do next. Like I said, we could see some more downside, and I know earnings are just around the corner, so a lot of eyeballs there. I do think we could actually see back to, possibly this lower level down here, which would come into play around that 600 mark. So we're going to keep an eye on this stock over the next couple of days. It did break away 3 strong days, snapping into the 21 and then giving you those 3 strong days down. It needs to consolidate, it needs to contract in this area. And again, really more for the intraday, shorter-term scalping traders at this point than I think anybody looking to commit capital either long or short. So that's kind of the strategy there with Apple. It's more of a hands-off approach. And I think you need to keep a watchful eye on it over the next couple of days to get a real sense of what type of bounce this is going to put in. Is this going to be a real strong bounce back to the 21 EMA, or are we going to get a couple days of choppy, overlapping, corrective type action before, this downward pressure, then potentially resumes? And I think both scenarios are on the table right now, and I think you have to be cognizant of it. What else is out there that we're watching? MasterCard, some of the credit cards, talked about them this morning, breaking their short-term trend lines. This is MasterCard. Here's Visa. Visa not quite as aggressive, but breaking that shorter-term, uptrend. Amazon, another one that's seen some pretty vicious selling off of these averages. Again, notice when the averages turn down, the 21 and the 8, snapping back and shorting into those declining averages can be a very, very profitable approach to trading, which is why I spent the first few minutes in the spiders talking about those moving averages, waiting for those to catch up. Chipotle, another one, pushing lower today, gapping down off earnings. There was no buying on Friday, and again, subtly making new lows again today. We took out Friday's lows earlier in the day. Here's an intraday chart. Here's a 13-minute look at Chipotle. And again, still acting relatively very, very weak, sitting on the lower end of the range as we get through lunch here. As the sellers just don't seem, done with the stock yet, we'll keep an eye. It did put in a very, very subtle low that was tested and held here. For those that are really more on the micro side, down here around 237.50, it looks like 238. We'll keep an eye on how this low plays out. But at this point, still a very, very weak stock that needs to be respected, as there's just been a massive amount of selling there off earnings. Is it overextended? Yes, it is. It is short-term, way overextended, and I think a lot of traders are going to be looking for some sort of bounce there, but that bounce really not developing at this point for more than just a couple of pennies. What else do we have on the tape that I think is worth watching? Whole Foods. Interesting looking pattern in Whole Foods. I talked about it on the VTF this morning. Looks like a little bit of a head and shoulders on the daily, pivots, lower highs on each side. You have a flat bottom support. Friday into today, we've traded back to support. Is this the area you want to be involved? Probably not. Maybe wait for a 1 to 2 day consolidation down here. Again, let these averages play catch up to the price of the stock, and I think you might see some lower prices in the cards there in the not too distant future. Again, be wary of when stocks report earnings. Make sure you are aware of those dates, as you don't want to be caught long or short into earnings, as that's generally taking on a lot more risk. That being said, I think that's a pretty good approach to today's trading session. Very, very choppy. Some of the stocks that have seen some really, really big haircuts, Apple's price lines, bouncing back early in the session and now sort of, getting tossed around. I think less is more today, even maybe into tomorrow. Give this market a chance to, consolidate from Friday. You will eventually see another, swift move down potentially. or some more contraction. But be patient. There are a lot of trades on the board. If you are a short-term scalper, really a very, very good day for you, as there's been lots of chaotic movement back and forth. But for those that are really more looking to commit capital, I think a little bit of time you're going to start to see a very, very interesting story develop. And I've said that for a few days now. And again, watch the spiders, watch the moving averages, watch how price starts to act today and tomorrow and possibly into Wednesday. And I think you're going to get an idea of what potentially may be in store for us in the more intermediate term. As always, a plan trader is a profitable trader. I'm Laz. Have a great day, everybody.
Hi, I'm Sean Hendelman of T3 Live, where we train, coach, and mentor traders in order to help you put your money to work with confidence. The T3 Live approach is a blueprint for you to recognize, adapt, and ultimately take advantage of different market conditions. To begin your training with T3 Live, we would like to offer you the opportunity to enroll in our free 30-day online home study course. Fill in your name and email address, and I'll see you on the other side.